Jen?
I'm doing pretty well on this Tuesday morning. Is that what day it is? I've been in an edit suite, so I don't, I kind of lost track of time.
Yeah, what film are you working on these days? I'm curious.
It's just a little thing about ketogenic diets and cholesterol. I don't know if you've heard about it or not.
I might have heard a thing or two. So, yeah, let me go ahead and set the table. Jen Isenhart, I have been working with very closely for the last 2 years. You are the director of our coming film, The Cholesterol Code. So, what's the log line, if you will, for the cholesterol code?
Well, it's a film about this guy who's a software developer, engineer, who finds a group of people who are slim and healthy, the picture of health, but their physicians are just certain they're going to die young. And so this guy named Dave goes on an adventure to figure out what is going on and also how it applies to the rest of us.
Yeah, you know, the fun fact to know and tell is that I didn't find slim, active people. Rather, their lipid levels found me. So here I am. I'm writing about this in my blog called The Cholesterol Code at the time because I was curious. But it became interesting about a year and a half into sharing this data and having a lot of people write to me. And then they would have this pattern, which we talk about in the movie, of these three lipid values and the commonality that they all tended to be more metabolically healthy. But you yourself got to learn a lot about this as you were putting the film together, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that was one of the interesting things was your process of discovery. And I think we captured that pretty well in the film. It's like at first, you think you are a unicorn or, oh my gosh, why is this, how could this possibly be happening? But then, in this day and age, you're able to reach out on social media and find out that you're not a unicorn. In fact, that there are people all over the world that are experiencing the same phenomenon. And so I think your process of discovery, even of just finding out that you weren't alone, is an interesting part of the story. Yeah.
Let's go ahead and get into yourself, your team, and just a little bit of a background. At a minimum, we've got to go back one film because if I'm not mistaken, this is not your first film that covers low carb. Am I right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So we did a film that was released in 2020 called Fat Fiction. And that film was about the history of the US dietary guidelines and kind of the miserable failure of the low fat diet and, um, and the vilification of saturated fat being a big part of that. And whether or not that was actually based in science. And as there was not a lot of scientific rigor behind the dietary guidelines, and it correlates with a huge increase in obesity and chronic diseases in our country. So that was a really interesting film to be involved in, and I learned a lot on that film. And I think that the cholesterol code is just it's a natural next step. It's a progression of that story, because the thing that has scared people about low carb and ketogenic diets is the fear of cholesterol. The fear that, yes, maybe you're going to lose weight, normalize your blood pressure, your blood sugar, reverse all these conditions, but oh, that cholesterol is really going to be a problem. So examining that, I mean, obviously that's been your work and learning from you throughout your process of discovery and your study. It's just been a fascinating journey and fascinating next step for us as filmmakers.
You know, all of that said, it is a challenge, I think, with this story to convert this knowledge because lipidology, the study of lipids, gets pretty complex, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Something I've tried to convey as best as I can to other people is that we kind of had almost a three-step process. You were looking at a lot of the things that I had given in lectures, a lot of the stuff that I'd written. But I myself am not a screenwriter. You actually took a lot of what I was saying, and I think you did such an excellent job of kind of basically writing it in my voice, with me just doing a bit of technical editing on the other end. But so often I would get script notes from you that just looked amazing on the front end. Did you find that part of the process challenging?
Yeah. Oh, for sure. Yeah. I mean, the science is deep, and you have a great command of it. And my job is to translate that to a lay audience, because this film is for a lay audience. And so I want people to be able to get a grasp on what's going on with the lipid energy model and why this could be happening, and in relation to a ketogenic diet in people who are lean, and but also not dumb it down so much that it feels like we lose, the detail, too much. So it's a tricky balance, as you know, and I think you and I worked really well together on the script. It was a great back and forth, and I think we landed in a really great place that'll give enough science to the science nerds out there, and explaining what's going on with the lipid energy model, but also make sense to a lay audience and understand how it could be affecting them in their daily lives. So that'll be interesting. It'll be really interesting to hear from audiences once the film is out, um, how it felt to them. But yeah, that was a great process. I think we did well with that.
Yeah, and we're not done. There's
I
still
know.
still a bit more to go.
Well, the script is done at least.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Listen, I mean, I've thanked you so many times in private and so many times in
Oh,
public, and I just you guys have just been top notch. And one thing that I have to absolutely concede as the kind of, I guess, protagonist through the film is there were a lot of things that I was pretty sure would need to be in the film or that didn't need to focus as much in the film that you helped bring to light was important for telling this story.
mm,
And to that extent, I feel like I want to talk to anybody who ever decides that they want to get involved in filmmaking but are coming from the outside. There's just a lot of things that you, Tom, Bill, you really only get to know from having really worn the beaten path for a long time. And
yeah.
I think it really showed in the process.
Was there something that was surprising to you that we keyed in on that we really wanted to include, that you were kind of like, like, what was there an example of something like that?
Yeah, actually, if I were to pick one of the earliest ones was that I did want to put more focus on the science, trying to be sure that they came away with more of a mechanistic understanding. And very early on, you said, "Yeah, I think we should put a little more time into the stories. In fact, get into some of these personal stories even earlier in the film."
Mhm.
That's where a lot of people will connect. And it's not that the science isn't exciting. It's just that there really is nothing quite like the human connection, especially when you can feel that emotional pull of what they're dealing with in the same way that you were, Dave. I'm kind of paraphrasing you to some degree.
Yeah, right.
But you were so dead right on that. And as you know, the further we got in, the more I started subtracting pieces of the science, going,
That was the give and take, right?
yeah, we can leave this. Look, they can see any one of my, I don't know, 12 lectures of various types recently, and they can read our published papers. But, there's nothing like bringing home what it is for somebody to be facing this difficult choice
Mm-hmm.
and getting to the heart of, what this really means, particularly in terms of risk. That's the other neat part. The other neat part that anybody who's just tuning in may not realize is that we managed to get this thing started right as the data started rolling in with
Yeah.
the lean mass hyperresponder study. And so cameras were in the room as I'm getting data for the first time. And I don't think it disappoints. I think there's a lot of
Yeah.
reactions that are absolutely genuine coming from me throughout that entire process.
Yeah, I'm so glad we did that, because I remember that was like our first phone call that you and I had. You called me kind of for me out of the blue, and we started talking about your research and that you were wanting to do this film project. And then you started telling me your timeline and saying, well, I'm going to get the first data like in a couple weeks. I think it was it like a week or 2 weeks after our first phone
It
call?
it was, and we were already sure that we weren't going to have a budget in time.
And I was
So
just like, "Oh my god, we have to get this. We have to get it no matter what."
yeah,
And so, we scrambled and got a camera crew to follow you to that first preliminary data release, and I'm so glad we did because we got the study from beginning to end, every step of the release of information as you were learning it in real time. And I think that's a fascinating part of the story because people don't understand how hard it is to conduct science. And I think that that is one of the things that comes through loud and clear in the film in following you and seeing what you go through and the ups and the downs as and to complicate things even more, to be coming at it from the outside, as an engineer, not from the halls of academia or from medicine. So I'm so glad we captured the entire arc of your study. And I'm also glad, to the point you brought up earlier, that we captured the people stories. And the people that we've interviewed really are caught in a very difficult place where a ketogenic diet has reversed or controls a very challenging health issue for these folks. But then the cholesterol becomes a worry for them, for their physicians, for their families. And so, seeing that these are real people, these are real stories,
yeah.
of people's lives that are caught in these situations, and following you to get the data, to get hopefully find some answers for them. I just think it's a great combination. It makes for a great film.
Yeah, this is the other part that I've definitely said many times before. I'll say it again. We have, I think, 10 published, maybe 11 published papers now on this model, on lean mass hyperresponders. And ironically, our ability to publish is not what I found to be the biggest driver for getting more research done. It's actually getting to the non-research. It's getting out to the wider public
Mhm.
and getting more interest out there broadly. That gets the researchers more interested specifically. It shouldn't work that way, but in our experience, it does.
Mhm. Yeah, calling attention to the research, there's a way. I mean, social media has been such a powerful tool for you, wouldn't you say? I mean,
Couldn't
could
do
you
it
have
without
done
it.
this? Could you have done this before 2005?
There's no chance. I mean, it's possible that I could have been, posting this on a forum somewhere that
Yeah.
perhaps a dozen people see, 2 dozen people see, something like that. But I came up in that age. I mean, I was, part of the dot-com boom and bust, and I remember what it was to get on forums at that time, and to the degree with which there was great specialization, that was important.
Mhm.
But social media was a game changer in that it makes it faster and easier to find people in a similar context as yourself.
Yeah.
And the other factor is, let's say this did happen before 2005. At that time, the low carb diet was not that popular for people to take on if they were already metabolically healthy. It was the other direction. It's the one you've already covered, which is the low fat diet. And if your metabolism is in good shape, you can probably do just fine on it. In fact, you can metabolize carbs quite well.
Mhm.
So this really was, in my opinion, a confluence of different, let's call them happy accidents, different things that happen to come together at the same time. It wasn't just social media. It was that there were a lot of people, many of them in our documentary, that were finding efficacy, that were finding healing through a ketogenic diet, but who were already metabolically healthy, but then would also experience this, heightened rise in LDL. And I'll just insert one more thing, which is that we didn't just interview people who saw an increase of, like, say, 20 or 30 milligrams per deciliter. We have folks in our film who are at levels unheard of, truly unheard of outside of genetic abnormalities. And some of them are even big names in the low carb community.
Yeah, that's right. You'll just have to watch the film and find out who they are.
That's right. So
Did it
uh,
tease it that way?
we should do the pitch. Of course, if you haven't already heard, part of why we're talking today is yesterday I got to announce that indeed the world premiere of our film is going to be just before the COSI conference right here in Las Vegas, February 7th. It's going to start. We've kind of given a tentative start time of 5 p.m. Probably the showing will be sometime around 6, but
Mhm.
details there may change. However, it'll be at the Beverly Theater, which is freaking gorgeous.
Yeah, it's a great
And
spot.
yeah, people, if you're interested in seeing it, just complete registration at COSI. There's an additional add-on now that you can register to be part of the interest list, and we go in order of who registered as to whether or not until we've used up all the seats, until all the seats are taken. But I'm so excited for that premiere, and we're going to be on a panel Q&A afterwards for people to have questions. But wow, what a marathon! We've been doing this for 22 months.
Yeah,
Look, it'll be exactly 2 years since we were capturing that original data that we were discussing from 2 years ago.
yep.
And wow, it's so much work. Whatever anyone thinks, if they've never done a film before, the level of work is, it's so much more than that. And I am not even the person sitting in the editing bay or booking all of these
Yeah.
crews that you were doing,
Mhm.
all of the travel. I mean, it's so much work, and you were a crack team, a relatively small team
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
managed to pull off just really monumental cinematography and sets and everything. I'm still floored at how fantastic everything came together.
Yeah, I think it's really come together. It's still coming together. It's not quite done yet, but it will be very soon. And yeah, I'm really pleased with how it's come together. Every piece, every part just builds upon the next, and I think people are going to enjoy it. It'll be real fun to get it out there and let audiences start watching it.
What would you say was your biggest unexpected challenge? You kind of had one for me. Now I've got one for you in the
Yeah.
course of filming this that you were not anticipating.
Um, I think the script actually was challenging, and the quantity of material, and that's partly what made the script challenging too. I mean, you came to us with terabytes full of footage that you had already shot. I mean, you'd been traveling around the world meeting these people and knowing that you wanted to do something with it and interviewing folks. I think you'd done about 45 hour to 2 hour interviews that you delivered to my doorstep.
Yeah,
And that was the beginning.
that's right.
And then we went out and did about another 40 interviews. And so I think the most challenging part was getting through all the raw material and using the best parts. And then, of course, always one of the hardest things is what to cut, what not to include, was probably one of the biggest challenges with this piece. And there are some pieces that didn't make it into the film that I am sad about. But I think we can use those pieces as extras and do other things with those pieces and parts that didn't make it into the film. But yeah, I think just the quantity of material, the science, and then choosing, what to go with, what to include, and what had to stay on the editing room floor, as they say. That was the challenging part.
I have one funny anecdote to inject that's timely. You were just pinging me yesterday, which was a very busy day, but you're pinging me yesterday that I had in one of the edits, I'd suggested we use like a different image, and you were saying, okay, but I need those images. Like you've got to get me more images from here. And I don't know if you saw, I did have an email with a whole bunch of new images, so
I
forth.
did see.
And I have a funny excuse beyond my busyness,
Okay.
which is covered in the film, which is I have literally 40,000 or 50,000 pictures, something in that neighborhood, And so I had to sift through a whole bunch of my food pictures, which are completely useless to us, um, to find pictures of myself.
You sent me that and I saw that link and I immediately flashed on the image of you sitting in front of your computer sifting through all those photographs.
Scrubbing, yeah.
Yes, I can understand that it is a process.
We should take a few comments and questions. This one actually comes from YouTube, from Keto Simple. Says it's fascinating. I've heard from a few people that they started low carb keto and saw great results, but their doctor told them that to stop because their cholesterol was going so high, and they did.
Mhm,
So I'll emphasize something. What I do love about our film, there's two big important things, I think. I think when you come away from this film, you'll hear different possible things people can choose to do depending on what their circumstances are. They're actually covered in these stories.
mhm,
And the other part that I like is I also feel like we're not a one size fits all. It's not like there's a single message. And I believe that our story does a fairly good job. I'm kind of hoping a lot of doctors who may not already be keen on low carb will see it because they may come away with some new ideas on good ways to assess risk.
mhm,
I'll just go ahead and spoil this part if you don't mind, Jen, because we already talk about it all the time anyway.
mhm,
Nothing quite beats looking at the physical presence of disease. So
mhm,
there's already plenty of science that establishes if you get, say, a CAC or a CT angiogram, that actually looks to see where the state of your disease is now. And while this is by no means medical advice, you could look at the existing literature as to how predictive that is towards future outcomes.
mhm.
And that's something we talk about. We have a lot of doctors we interview in the film about that very question.
Yeah, that's actually one of the pieces I love. It's one of my favorite pieces, is Dr. Budoff and Dr. Agatston talking about the first time they finally got a CT machine that was fast enough that they could scan and take images of a live beating human heart. And that was fairly recently that, the technology became fast enough and high resolution enough to be able to do that. And I love that we have that backstory of that technology, and then playing it forward, how that technology has become an incredible tool for people who are concerned about their cholesterol, but who are maybe experiencing a lot of benefits from a ketogenic diet. That they have this scan and this diagnostic tool that they can use. So yeah, I think that's a great. I love that story in the film.
We have another question. Curious how folks can watch the film. Online purchase? Question mark. Of course, it's true. We should mention this one. Beyond the premiere, we plan to do a few more showings. It hasn't been decided where exactly, but at least 4 or 5 more cities will kind of have premieres after our premiere. And then sometime after that, I can't give a hard date because it's in the process of getting worked out now. But hopefully within a matter of weeks following the premiere, there'll actually be an online release on a major streaming platform. You think
Yeah.
that's probably likely, Jen?
Yeah, highly likely. Yeah. Yeah, we already have a distributor in place from Fat Fiction, and so we already have that relationship, and so yeah, I don't think it's a matter of how quickly it'll go up. So we will definitely be announcing and posting links and information as soon as that's available. So.
Now, if you don't mind, I want to mention one more thing that I continue to find so fascinating, which is uh, your director of photography and somebody who you work with very closely happens to also be your husband. How long
Yes.
have you two been working together?
Uh, well, he's right here behind the camera. Let me
Long,
ask
long
him.
time.
Um, let's see. Yeah, about 30 years, I guess.
Wow.
We actually started working together before we got married. So, yeah. But then we've been married for, I think we'll be 27 years this fall. So,
Congratulations.
next fall. Yeah, so yeah, long time. We started our business in about 2000 together. We worked in television. We each did programs. We were doing long form content for a television station for a few years. And then we started our own business in 2000. So we've been doing Wide Eye Productions coming on 25 years now.
Wow.
So,
Quarter
yeah.
of a century.
Yeah. Oh, now you're making me sound old. Stop that. No. But yeah, it's been great. It's been a good run, and we have other staff as well. But Tom has done a great job leading the photography side of our business, and I am more writing and producing, and we have other producers and other photographers on staff here as well. So
Great editor.
yeah, great
I was
editor.
about to get to him. Bill,
Yeah, please
yeah,
do.
Bill Crum, right? Is how I say his
Yes,
last name.
Bill. Yeah.
He's, he radiates veteran. Like when you're just in the room with him, you just know he's got war stories. 'Cause, and
Yeah.
every time I see him, I apologize that he's had to stare at my face for like the last 9 months in editing bay.
Yeah.
But he is so strong on those edits. I mean, I myself, so something a lot of people may not know, I actually did go to film video school. Hey, it was also 25 years ago. So about the time you guys were starting up.
Okay.
And I remember at the time thinking that I would always probably want to edit my own. If I was ever part of some film, then I would want to edit it because I just feel very strongly on the timing of things. And I mean, 90 whatever 7% of everything that I've seen coming out of that editing bay has been like, I don't have any notes. It's really great, like right as it is. So many things are like snappy and they're well paced and
Yeah.
move with the mood so well. So Bill is very
Yeah.
tuned in to what the throughput of the whole story is. It's incredible.
Yeah. I mean, he's a storyteller through film and has been for decades. And he knows how to weave pictures and sound and craft a compelling story that has pace. There's rhythm to an edit. It's almost a musical process. That has to have a rhythm for people to follow and stay with it. And the thing about Bill is he leaves no inch of footage unturned. I mean, we have been through every minute of footage, and made sure that we're pulling the best of the best, and that's a lot because of Bill. And so, yeah, he's incredibly dedicated and talented. He's in the edit suite right now. He probably doesn't even, he doesn't know we're talking about him because he's in there editing and getting this thing done. So, yeah, it's in large part the quality of the film, of the finished product is due to his dedication and his talent. I mean, we're incredibly fortunate to have him as an editor on this project, also on Fat Fiction, and on many of our other productions that we've done over the years. So, yeah, I'm really happy to have him on board and have him working on this film.
We have an interesting question coming in. Will it be possible to buy DVD or Blu-ray for those refusing to share their data with streaming services?
Oh, we made the step with Fat Fiction in 2020.
Hmm.
That was our first film that we did not make DVDs or Blu-rays because the technology's just gone away. And it's an expensive thing to do too. Producing Blu-rays, producing DVDs it's somewhat costly. It's difficult to even get the one-off burners anymore. I don't know. Do you still have a Blu-ray burner,
I don't know
Dave?
that I do. Well, I don't know that I ever had a Blu-ray burner. I had a
Oh,
DVD
okay.
burner at one time, but
Okay. Yeah,
um,
we've had Blu-ray burners here to do one-offs, but even those, the software's gone. So I'm sorry to say that we probably will not have a disc version of the film, but maybe we could set up a way that people could purchase a download. Dave, I bet
yeah.
maybe we could get something like that set up, so that
I
you
mean,
would.
if it's one of those points in time where we like have a where it's like available for streaming easily enough, and our distributors don't mind if we have some one-offs of like, I don't know, a handful of people,
Mhm,
I'll bet they would work with us on
mhm,
that. I do
mhm.
have to say, with kindness, that this is a comment that's literally coming from YouTube. YouTube is a streaming service. Just as an aside.
That's a good point, and it will end up on YouTube at a certain point. So
True.
if you're comfortable with YouTube, then you'll be able to see it there. Yeah,
Yeah, that's actually a fairly good point.
yeah.
So I wanted to thank you so much for making this time available. I know you're super busy with this project you're doing, but I do want to be sure that everybody knows where they can find out more about you, where they can also find Fat Fiction, the film that precedes ours,
Oh, yeah.
and what they can expect to see next. So first off, can you give us where they can go to learn more about Wide Eye?
Yeah, sure. Our website is wideeye.tv, so wide eye with two E's in the middle, and .tv like television. So that's our website. You can check us out there. Then we're also on YouTube as Wide Eye TV. And then we're also on Facebook with that same address. And Fat Fiction we have a Facebook page for Fat Fiction as well. You could find that if you just go on Facebook and look for Fat Fiction documentary film. You'll find us, and we have links there for all the places where you can see the film. So Fat Fiction's on Amazon and YouTube and Google Play and many of the streaming platforms. So you can take your pick if you want to watch with commercials for free, or if you want to pay a couple bucks and not have commercials, it's up to you. But yeah, there's a
Pay the
lot of
money.
opportunities to see it. What's that?
I said, pay the money.
Oh,
Worth
yeah.
it.
I think we end up with a few cents either way. I don't know that it's a big difference for us, but yeah, not having to watch commercials is kind of nice. So, but it's totally up to your preference, and that's how the cholesterol code will be. There'll eventually be options where you can watch it for free or watch it, pay a couple bucks and not have to see ads, and that's nice to have those choices. So.
Yeah, we'll see how it lands. Those details are getting worked out now. Jen, I want to thank you so much, not only for your time to do this interview, but of course for doing this documentary. It's crazy to think the finish line is truly in sight. The seventh is going to be the big moment where we really unveil it.
Yep, I know. It's going to be exciting. It's going to be fun to see it on the big screen too. There's nothing like that. It's a great experience to see a film in that kind of an environment with a 5.1 surround sound and the whole cinematic experience. So that's going to be really fun too. So I'm looking forward to it, Dave, and it's been a pleasure working with you. Your enthusiasm and your story has been so fun to follow and be involved with. So I really appreciate you calling me that day and bringing me into this project. And of course, also, I know you have mentioned, but I need to mention too the support of Jan Bazuki and the
Yes.
Bazuki Group. This project wouldn't have been possible without their support. So we're very thankful to them as well. So.
Yeah, it's I mean, they're changing the world. There's no other way to put it. They are really advancing the research and bringing light to the enormous benefits of metabolic health, and I just couldn't be
Yeah.
more thankful.
Well, that's one thing, actually. I'll add one last comment. I'm really glad that the film focuses on mental health and the use of ketogenic diets for mental health. And I think that, that just seems to be an emerging story right now. I mean, thanks in large part to Jan Bazuki
Yeah.
and the work that they're doing with Metabolic Mind. But I'm so pleased that we were able to include some of those stories and people who have benefited firsthand from using a ketogenic diet to restore their mental health, and those are great stories that I'm excited to share in the film. So.
Jen, always a pleasure. And of course, I may try to talk you into doing one or two more interviews before the seventh. After all, we got to promote this film. Uh,
Okay, I
but for
prefer staying behind the camera, but I'll do it. I'll do it for you, Dave.
But for anybody else, just one more time, go to cosi.org. You'll then, if you want to jump on the interest list, and from there you will need to register with UNLV. That's part of the deal that we have for the conference, and then past that, you have the second part to the completing of the registration. The second part, you'll get an add-on where you can be added to this interest list. I hope to see you all there on the 7th. So until next time, I hope you all have a wonderful Thanksgiving, and we'll see you again soon.
All right. Thanks, Dave.